You said something about getting everything done in your business under 20 hours in a week. Tell me more about that.
I do most of my business Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I find that most of my clients do better when they work fewer hours because they're forced to be more efficient, they're forced to outsource, they're forced to trust their team, and forced to make it a more efficient machine instead of just filling the hours.
Welcome back to the Professional Rule Breaker Podcast. I'm your host, Kathy Walterhouse. And today I kind of want to start with a question. What if you didn't have to compromise what matters the most to you? Would that be important? Well, my next guest is the founder of the Heart-Centered Entrepreneur podcast and community. And she coaches ambitious women to help them launch and grow their service-based businesses without compromising what matters most to them in life. So I want to give a really big, the professional rule breaker welcome to my next guest, Anna Rapp.
Thank you, Kathy, so much for having me. I am thrilled to be here.
I'm happy to have you. So something that I mentioned in the beginning was about compromise. And I know that that's kind of like, I would say, a pillar of your business about not compromising. So what was that turning point when you got to that part where it was like, okay, no more compromising? Tell me about that.
I love that question. I think one of those biggest times in my life was when I have two kids, they're 6 and 8 now, but when my son was a toddler and when I was pregnant with my daughter, I was working my therapy day job and I actually had a day job that I loved. You know, you hear stories of like, I hate my job and I quit it. Like I actually really enjoyed it, but I felt like I was having to compromise being a patient and present mom with my son and having margin for my daughter. And so that's when I decided to start my coaching business. So I would say that was a big time.
Oh, I can really relate to that because it's similar to you. I had years, many, many years ago when my kids were young, I had this job that I loved. And we had a new CEO, and I was basically number 2 in line. We had this new CEO, and the meeting went really late. And of course, it was my son's very first basketball game. And I remember having to say, hey, I have to go. I can't miss this. This is his first basketball game. What happened next was kind of a surprise to me because I thought everybody else was like me, right? Working with other people, making sure you compromise so that everybody, has a really great personal life. No, it wasn't that at all. It was like, you got to put your work first. I love that you're talking about not compromising with all the people that you help. I mean, does that have something to do with being like a heart-centered entrepreneur?
That's such a great question. I get this question asked all the time because when I first founded Heart-Centered Entrepreneur, like the Facebook group, right? It's like 12K women now, but it started with like 10 women, right? And I just kind of picked it haphazardly, the name, right? Like now you hear this phrase all the time, heart-centered entrepreneur, but I just, like some things in my business I've overthought, but that was one thing where I was like, heart-centered entrepreneur, why not, right?
Best name ever, like the best name ever.
Isn't so funny that the things we belabor over end up being not important. And then the things we just kind of pick end up being like so pivotal, right?
Right.
But that's totally has defined so much of what I stand for. And I feel like my community stands for, which is getting clear on what your values are and making sure that that's primary, number one for your life, but also for your business.
Yeah, I mean, that's really important. But let me ask you that. I mean, what if something happens that it doesn't seem to kind of fit in that whole heart-centered or maybe like not compromising? I mean, what do you teach the people that are in your group? I mean, what are some suggestions?
I think like number one is getting clear. Well, most women that are like attracted to my message, they already are heart-centered, right? Because like, it's so funny because a lot of my clients had the problem of like, what if I post online and someone like gets mad at me or I offend someone? Or what if I sell someone something and then they're disappointed with it? Or like, I really like one of my clients, I just helped launch her design business and she loves to design. And she is like, I feel bad charging money for this because I really enjoy it. Right. So I think those sort of like heart-centered problems, women are already heart-centered. It's just they need permission to like make money and like grow their business. So I think it's like, I don't have to train women to be heart-centered. I just have to like train them to make money and not feel bad about it.
It's almost like you're giving them permission to be heart-centered in the world, right?
Yes.
Like out, in center stage.
Yeah, outside. I mean, that's it 100%. I always say, like, you made a great employee because you serve and you love and you're of an integrity. And how much more powerful are you going to be for yourself? And I think that's part of the fear is like when that power unleashes for us, we feel guilty that it's coming back in. When it's helping our employer, we feel good about it, right? But suddenly, when all of your service and the way that you show up and deliver and over deliver, when that's coming back to you in the form of like testimonials and money, it feels a little bit overwhelming.
I wonder if, because I have encountered entrepreneurs that in the workplace, they are so good about what it is that they do. Like they couldn't be any more of a superstar. And then when they go out on their own and they're selling the exact same thing, they struggle with it. I mean, do you think that's part of it? Or, I mean, what do you think that comes from?
Oh man, I do think it's like so complex, right? Because I remember like charging less as a coach than I was charging as a therapist, right? But still feeling this like total imposter syndrome because instead of them handing money to the receptionist, they were handing money to me. Like I remember when like PayPal invoices started coming in my inbox, it didn't feel good. Like I told my friend, like, I feel like I'm scamming people. She was like, "Are you scamming people?" I was like, "No, I'm not scamming people." But it just felt, sometimes I think when things feel different or new, like selling ourselves or receiving money, or we make that wrong instead of like, oh, this is just something I've never done before, right?
Yeah. Or maybe it is, again, like what you said, is that imposter syndrome that they're so good about what it is that they do, but they don't feel like they're good enough. And it's almost like, if not you, then who, right?
Mm.
Do you want somebody else that maybe isn't as capable as you coaching that person? I mean, even myself, I've sold close to $1 billion. And every once in a while, I think about that, like, should I really be teaching people how to do this? And I'm like, okay, if not me, then who? And it's crazy, isn't it?
I love that approach. I always tell my clients too, like, you don't have to be the best coach or service provider in the world or the ultimate expert, but can you believe that you're the perfect coach for your clients, right? Like, for example, I had a client tell me today on a call, like, oh, Anna, like, I don't know why someone would hire me. Like, why wouldn't they just hire you? Right. And it's like, the people hiring you, you're the best coach for them. And the people hiring me, you know what I mean? Like, and so just really having faith. I also love Denise Duffield Thomas says, you don't have to be an expert. You just have to be a contributor to the conversation. And I think that really helped me at the start too, knowing that like, I do have something to say about this topic, even if I'm not the ultimate expert.
I love that quote. I actually had not heard that quote before. So I love that quote.
Isn't
That's
that
really
great?
great. Yeah. Yeah. And also, I think that, don't you think that maybe, let's say you and your client, you guys have the exact same message,
No.
but people will hear, though, but don't you think people will hear what they want to hear? Because they'll hear it differently. Like you'll say it differently than someone else. And it might resonate with you, with your client, but maybe their client, it'll resonate with them because of whatever their life experience might be, or how they say it, or whatever special sauce they have.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you.
So you said, I read somewhere you said something about getting everything done in your business in
Mhm.
under 20 weeks. I mean, under 20 hours in a week.
Yeah.
Like, for a lot of entrepreneurs, business people, that would be a dream. So tell me more about that.
Yeah. So most of my clients are mamas, and their number one priority is to be patient and present mamas, whatever that looks like. Right. So I do most of my business Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. is the bulk of my work week. Sometimes I'll do like a little Monday and Friday here and there, right? But that's how I prioritize it and what I teach my clients to do too. I also do about 3 weeks out of the month and then leave the fourth week either blank for like travel with my kids, or sometimes I do a little bit of CEO work or projects or VIP days or stuff like that. But I find that most of my clients do better when they work fewer hours because they're forced to be more efficient. They're forced to outsource. They're forced to trust their team and forced to make it a more efficient machine instead of just filling the hours.
Yeah. There's that saying that if you need to get something done, give it to a busy person. So
Yes.
yeah, so if they're more focused and they have, I don't know, let's say they have an hour to do something versus like, oh, I have all day. And I know as a mom, you're like, oh, well, I can go put some laundry in. Maybe I'll start dinner or whatever it might be, rather than going, oh no, I have an hour.
Yep.
This has to get done.
100%.
Yeah. So how do you get people to change their thought process to do that?
I think it just starts with like small shifts and changes, right? Like really challenging my clients to think through like, when you think about your team or hiring team, or like what's one thing you can let go of and what makes sense first. Like for me, when I was like doing my business as a side hustle, as my boss lovingly called it, um, I hired a college student to do my laundry. Right. And that really felt like something that could like clear my plate. And then as I grew, I just really thought through like, okay, how do I hire more support inside my business? But I think you can just start small when it comes to like what inside my business actually needs to be me and what can I tolerate letting go of some control and just trusting other people to support me.
Yeah. So what do you say to the people that say, well, I can't really spend the money on hiring somebody to do my laundry? What do you say to those folks?
I mean, in some ways, it's like, can you really afford not to? Right. I think like business takes investment and calculated risk. I don't think we have to like haphazardly spend money. Right. But often for team, it costs you money before it makes you money. Right. Because you're training the team members and then they make mistakes. And then you're like, actually, that wasn't the right fit. I need to fire them and hire someone else. Right. It takes time and it takes money and it is an investment team. But I think it's knowing what you get back. And it's not just your time, but for me, it's also my brain space and my decision making space too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Especially once you get your team in place. Oh my gosh, what a huge difference it makes.
Yeah.
But it does. I mean, it can take some time, but if you're lucky enough to have the best team, and I count my blessings because I have the best team in the whole wide world. So I'm really, really fortunate. Let me ask you about your new book. I would love that title. So I'm like, what does that mean?
Yeah. Okay. So I wrote my book. I actually went to go start writing another book and I had it like 90% built out. And then I realized that one of the chapters in the book was the one that needed to be the whole book. So I deleted 90% of it. I left the one chapter in, and it's basically my story around how I created financial stability for myself because I was making money in my business, but I was really feeling unstable in my finances. And so what I ended up doing is creating a $20,000 savings account. That was my goal, to have $20,000 in business reserve savings. Um, and I called that my freedom fund because I noticed I was encouraging my clients to do this because it made such a difference for me for how much peace I felt in my business. About people want like consistent income months, but like business isn't consistent. A client might pay in full. You might have a big launch, right? So I feel like having that business reserve gave me the stability. But when I was telling my clients to open a savings account, they were like, that's so boring, right? When I was like, this is a freedom fund to like give you freedom, they were like, okay, great. And then everyone started doing it. So I think I just realized I needed to be the marketing person for savings accounts and kind of like make them sexy.
Oh, I love that name, Freedom Fund. Love that. I really love that. Years ago, I don't know if you know who T. Harv Eker is. He did this thing where you have like 5 buckets, and one of the buckets was, I think they called it the emergency fund, which I never liked that name because it's kind of like it has a negative connotation.
Like you're planning for an emergency,
You're
right?
planning for emergency, but really the Freedom Fund is kind of that, right? It
It's the
is.
same thing. Savings
It,
account, emergency fund. It's the same thing, just with the new name.
Right. It gives you, but I love the Freedom Fund name because it gives you that like you're kind of settled like, okay, if everything blows up, I have this freedom fund. Or if I want to do something different, I have this freedom fund.
And it really does, whether you have an emergency or not, right? And I think the other thing, women were resistant to saving money because they felt like, but then I won't be able to use it, right? Versus a freedom fund, you can use it with intention, right? And so when I was encouraging women to open up a brand new account at a brand new bank, not at their current bank, and create a freedom fund, I just found that women were making so much more financial momentum with that.
Absolutely. So tell me the name of your book.
Yes, 20K Freedom Fund.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think everyone should be out there, should go and get that book.
Yes.
So let
Yes,
me
you
ask.
should definitely get the book, but at minimum, get a 20K Freedom Fund, even if you don't read the book. But if
Yes.
you want the 9 steps, I do share my story and make you giggle in the book.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because those 9 steps, I bet you they're probably full of insight and kind of tell you like when you need to do things and how you need to do things. And I just think it's something that would provide relief to a lot of entrepreneurs, whether you're a man or you're a woman. I think it just provides relief when you have that in the kitty, your freedom fund.
I was looking, in the book, I say like, I tried so many things because I was just like guessing. I tried firing my bookkeeper because I was like, maybe I need to do my finances on my own. I tried so many things and I was like, oh no, I just needed, I tried trying all these softwares and it really is just having that cushion.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So let me ask you my most favorite question of all. What makes you a rule breaker?
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, in some ways, I'm like not a rule breaker because I'm like type A, like followed all the rules growing up. My parents always joke that they wish they could take some of my conscience and like give it to my sister because I almost had like an overactive conscience. But I think becoming an entrepreneur has definitely made me a rule breaker in the sense of really looking at like, why do we do the things we do? And do we have to do it that way? And how can I live more and more before God just in my own integrity and make the choices that I know are right for me, for my babies, and really not follow anyone else's rules or policies.
Yeah, well, that's actually kind of what a rule breaker is in my mind, at least. That's why I call it the professional rule breaker, where it's not about breaking laws. It's not about, doing, I would say, dumb stuff. It's about exactly what you said, thinking outside the box and going, why does it have to be that way? Or maybe there's a better way of doing it. So I adore your answer, really adore your answer. So
You're
tell me
getting
what.
better every day at being a rule breaker.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. You'll be part of Rule Breaker Nation.
Yes, please.
Yes. So tell me where people can find you.
Yes. So the best place is my podcast, The Heart-Centered Entrepreneur.
So we will have that in the show notes. I really want to thank my guest, Anna, and just think about that nugget, especially at the end that she threw out there about the Freedom Fund. How wonderful would you feel if you had 20,000 or whatever the number is for you, if it's greater or if it's less, if you had that in a bank somewhere so that you could just kind of relax and really pursue your passion. So that is a fantastic nugget. And I know that is sending ripples out there. That's my most favorite thing in the world to do is send out, these ripples across the world that will help people lead a better life. So thank you again, Anna. I really appreciate having you.
Kathy, you have such a beautiful heart and presence. And thank you so much for having me on your show.
Oh, you're so welcome.